Call the Board of Selectmen June 24th, 2024 meeting to order. And just as a reminder, we are being recorded and broadcast at this time. Thank you. Brendan, I'm not going to have you start because I think all of your items are going to be lengthy, so let me do a couple of smaller items. I will entertain a motion to approve the weekly warrant in the amount of $145,623.73.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes for the Selectmen's June 10th, 2024 open meeting.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You know what, actually, I'm going to pause, and I'm going to go out of order, and I'm going to go down to the sale of Canoma Point. If I can have those motions. Actually, Peter, can I have the folder right in front of you for one moment? In your hand, that one. I'm going to take some motions out of that. Actually, Carolyn Lee.
This one. No, I haven't done
So we have, consider request for 3 transfers of leases at Canoma Point, and we have the owners before us this evening. So I'm going to actually go through these and see if the board has any questions, or we can just do simple transfers. So the first one is going to be 154 Canoma Point Road. I will entertain a motion to approve a written request for the transfer of all interests in the leasehold for the property at 154 Canoma Point Road, map 108, lot 42, from the Harlan L.P. Wendell Jr. and Carol Dillon Wendell Revocable Trust to the Laura Burling Opler Living Trust, and further that nothing in this approval is intended to convey or imply any right, title, or interest in the subject property or any portion thereof that was not already held by the Harlan L.P. Wendell Jr. and Carol Dillon Wendell Revocable Trust.
So moved.
Second. Can
All
we have
those-
discussion?
We can have discussion.
I just want to understand when a trust gets transferred, is this for financial? Is it for just name? I'm trying to just understand how it works when we do a transfer.
If a new leaseholder that's hopeful to get an assignment from the current leaseholder decides to, they can simply use the trust as their preferred, I guess, property interest vehicle. It really makes no difference to the board. It's really the preference of the party that is taking the assignment. And many times people do that because it has to do with liability. It also has to do with how they are planning their estate matters.
And so I'm just trying to understand, as far as if I was to sell my property and turn it over to somebody else, the price, the property, I mean, there's no value change. And that's what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to understand.
It's just the form in which the property interest is held. In this case, it's a lease.
That's not helping me. So the lease changes from one person to another person. Nothing changes about it. The property, everything about the lease is exactly the same.
That's correct.
Right, and it's more about legal protection. So if I own a house, I own this house here, and it's the Ruth Perrine Trust, and I want to sell it to you, and you have the Alva Ingahara Trust, it's just a legal entity that's protecting
Are
it.
you selling your trust to me, my trust? That's what I'm trying to
No.
understand.
No. I'm selling my house to you. So my trust owns my house, and I'm selling my house to you, but you're putting it in your trust. So it's not, so your trust now owns it, and when it actually is beneficial to have a trust is when somebody dies, all of the assets go into the trust. The trust then disperses the funds. So it's not like it goes to probate at a court. So a lot of people do trust to protect, like we have a trust for my kids, and
If I was to sell my house to you, my house, when I bought it, or when it's assessed today, is at a one value. I sell it, it's now 3 million more. No, it's not gonna be that, I promise you that. So does that change?
no. The value is the value.
No,
No.
not at all.
All right.
So it's not that,
And it's my ignorance, I'm trying to understand, we do this a lot, and I don't understand why I understand why we're approving it, because we're,
that's the form of lease holding, if you will, that the party that's being assigned to them prefers to use. It has really nothing to do with
Okay.
the town. It's the same as an individual, as far as we're concerned. It's their preference.
Okay,
And you could put your house in a trust if you wanted to. You know, you don't have to, but a lot of times it's for, you know, the will or
Okay.
lawsuits, things like
right,
that.
okay, thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I will entertain a motion to approve a written request for the transfer of all interests in the leasehold for property at 1 Middle Road, map 108, lot 43, from the Harlan L.P. Wendell Jr. to Jonathan and Molly Gistis, and further that nothing in this approval is intended to convey or imply any right, title, or interest in the subject property or any portion thereof that was not already held by Harlan L.P. Wendell Jr.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I will entertain a motion to approve a written request for the transfer of all interests in the leasehold for the property at 159 Canomo Point Road, map 108, lot 38, for the Harlan L.P. Wendell Jr. to Jonathan and Molly Gistis, and further that nothing in this approval is intended to convey or imply any right, title, or interest in the subject property or any portion thereof that was not already held by Harlan L.P. Wendell Jr.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you both, and good luck. I will entertain a motion to ratify the chairman's signature of an authorization document to apply for Bridge Academy expense reimbursement for the Essex Police Department.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I will entertain a motion to ratify the chairman's signature of a letter of support for a grant that Verizon is seeking from the state that will help Verizon roll out high-speed internet services in Essex.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I will entertain a motion to vote to approve and sign a Chapter 44, Section 33B transfer request to the Finance Committee in the amount of $5,000 from Assistant Treasurer Collector to tax title expenses.
Anything we need to talk about there? No?
no, this is because there was additional activity from our tax title attorney with respect to several properties that are in tax title, including the Allen properties. And the usual budget would not cover his services this year.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I will entertain a motion to vote to approve and sign a Chapter 44, Section 33B transfer request to the Finance Committee in the amount of $4,100 from the town custodian to town property.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I will entertain a motion to ratify the town administrator's signature on a temporary waiver for Harbor Master Dan Fiello from having to complete certain training required by the Harbor Master Training Council.
What is that?
So presently, a harbor master in Massachusetts has to go through a certain regimen of training that the Harbor Master Training Council prescribes. In our case, where we have a part-time harbor master, he does not have the time during the day to go to trainings like this. And it is possible for 270 days at a time to request that they allow him to continue serving as the town's harbor master until such time that perhaps there's another training opportunity.
So when he has free time to go or
Right.
whatever, yeah.
And so in this case, in order for him to keep serving, the Harbor Master Training Council will have to take this up. But it's obviously important for the board to be able to back that. Yeah.
And have we done this before? Is my
Yes.
question. So, like, just recently? So has it been?
His last-
550 days?
This is the second 270 that I can remember, and it's because he's not available usually when the training is offered.
So When is the next training, and can he be available? I
The
mean,
problem is he can't be available. He has a full-time job, and the trainings happen Monday through Friday during the days, during the daytime hours, like, I don't know the exact hours, but that was the issue when we signed it 2 summers ago. It was that they were offering the course Monday through Friday. Brendan, was it like 16 weeks? And
it's
like
pretty
8 to 4.
extensive.
It was
Okay, so it's a,
16-week course?
it was a long enough course that he couldn't take time
Right,
off from his real job.
Right. Is he getting that training somewhere else, or does he have it from previous, or?
and does it put us in liability?
Well, I think the liability comes off us when we sign the waiver and they sign the waiver.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it adds,
Taken the course at all?
he's taken some training courses, but not the whole regimen of courses that are required. I would say no, does it add liability? The town has great immunity from actions of the town as long as the employee is trying to act in good faith. Okay, so I wouldn't see a problem with that. It's a matter of, will they grant another one in the future? Is the town going to continue with a part-time harbor master, or maybe look back toward the police chief when you get a new one being the harbor master? That was our arrangement for years.
Yeah.
So I think we can look at those things, but for now, we do need someone who's approved, even under a waiver, to be a harbor master.
I guess I'm just at a hard time. So you're telling me it's a 16-week course, and that's...
I don't know exactly how long it is. I can get more information for you.
Because
We
if I
can,
was a full-time employee and it was a 2-week course, I would say, all right, I'm going to take 2 weeks vacation and take this 2 weeks course. But if it's a 16 weeks, okay, I see what that is a detriment to, how can you take 16 weeks off of work when you have a, you're only a part-time harbor master?
And that they don't offer it in, over weekends?
Online, virtual, or any other form?
That was the issue. We do still need, an approved harbor master.
For sure.
And the waiver will do that. I think it needs to be looked at generally as to whether we should continue in that fashion versus try to change it when,
Absolutely.
Right,
And
right,
we
right.
have an opportunity for that coming up, but I'm trying to, we're talking now another 275 days,
270
a
days.
year. How many have we done? And
So-
I just want to make sure that we're putting the town of Essex in the best light, and somebody on the harbor isn't going to have an issue and then sue the town of Essex because we're doing this.
I don't think they would, because he's going through the appropriate process to get the waiver. It's not as if we do nothing, then we're more open to challenge.
I think Alva's concerned about him doing something that he would have learned in the training, but he didn't learn it because he didn't take the training, and it's the wrong thing to do, and then the town is
Yes,
liable.
it's just unfortunately, in our situation with somebody who works part-time and is not,
Right. No, I totally understand.
is very
I do,
difficult.
I understand completely, I just want to,
I think we should actually ask, because the most recent bulletin that I can find on the Harbor Master Training Council says that the training bulletin requires, in service from 2017 is the last update I can find. It says will consist of 20 hours of Harbor Master continuing education training, i.e. police in service, NASBLA, U.S. Coast Guard course, Harbor Master seminars, and shall include CPR and first aid, which we know he has.
we know he has that right.
So we should probably, if it is only 20 hours, he probably should take it. But I think at this point, the issue is going to be
Yeah.
that he needs the
We need a
waiver.
waiver now, correct.
And then
we
say to
And then
him,
we need to say,
when is
by
the next-
next year,
yeah,
or when your
exactly.
270 is up,
I agree.
we
That
need
would
you
be
to have
great.
this.
I would 100% be on board with that. I
So
just
I'll
wanna
find
make
out-
sure
I'll find
we have
all of
our
that out.
lines, T's crossed, our I's dotted for the town.
So I think we could probably add that, to entertain a motion to ratify the town administrator's signature on the temporary waiver for Harbor Master Dan Fiello from having to complete certain training requirements by the Harbor Master Training Council, and he must complete that training
Within the two.
Within the cycle.
within the 270-day window. So we'll just add that to the motion.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it is 6:19. My apologies for keeping you waiting. If you'd like to join us at the podium, we have a 6:15 appointment with Chris Lapointe from Essex County Greenbelt to discuss a proposed conservation restriction of 97 acres owned by the Penoyer family. So Chris, when you speak at the podium, if you can speak about 6 or 8 inches from the microphone, we are being recorded, and it's tough for people online to hear us if we don't get your voice to kind of get into that microphone.
Great. Thanks very much. Good evening, everyone. Chris Lapointe. I'm Vice President of Conservation Operations at Essex County Greenbelt. I appreciate time in the agenda this evening. The matter before you is a request for approval of a conservation restriction over land formerly owned by the Penoyer family and the 68 Grove Street Trust. So Essex County Greenbelt has been raising funds and working over the past year to acquire approximately 90 acres of land from the Penoyers. About 42 acres of that is in Essex, and the remainder is in Gloucester. So this is sort of between Forest Ave, off of Southern, up at kind of the northern end of the woods, east of Southern Ave. So in May and June, in 2 different transactions, Greenbelt acquired all of this land. One of the funding sources that we used for that acquisition was a state conservation partnership grant, which requires Greenbelt to convey a conservation restriction to another entity. The Manchester Essex Conservation Trust has agreed to be the holder of that restriction. The state has reviewed and approved the restriction. Gloucester has approved their portion of this, the bit that's in the city. And I'm here this evening to, we'll tell you a little bit more about what the land is and then to answer any questions that you might have. But essentially, 90 acres of land in a variety of different parcels that is contiguous with land owned or protected by Greenbelt, Manchester Essex Conservation Trust, hundreds of acres of land that's owned by the city of Gloucester for watershed protection purposes. Many of you have probably been on this property over years. There's a tremendous trail system that extends from Essex into Gloucester and back and forth. Protects the headwaters of Ebon Creek before it flows out into the marsh. It's all Biomap 3 rare species habitat. It's really beautiful land. So I'm happy to answer any questions about any of that, but the
I have a question that might be helpful for the board. So Chris, you mentioned that all of the land in question is already under the ownership of the Greenbelt?
Yes.
So what is its tax status already? Is it exempt?
It will be exempt going forward.
And
Without its-
can I
Without
just
the
ask,
restriction?
When did Greenbelt acquire this land?
In May and June of 2024.
And so I'm just trying to understand, so why are they here? If they've already acquired the land, why do they have to come here for approval?
That's a requirement of the purchase, right?
Right, so an additional layer of conservation protection on this property is that Greenbelt will convey a conservation restriction to another entity. So the Manchester Essex Conservation Trust will hold a restriction over land that Greenbelt owns to ensure, in addition to what we would do anyway, that the land is permanently protected, that it is available, open to the public, free of charge, that it is maintained
Right.
in its natural state.
Right, and that's why the parties would like to have that extra layer, I get that. But even if that didn't happen, from here forward, it would still be exempt, because it's already owned by Greenbelt.
Correct, Brendan.
So I don't know if that's helpful. I know there were questions in the
It
past
just,
about it.
I mean, I'm sorry, it just seems like why is this coming in front of us? 40 acres of land in Essex, and it's coming to us saying, hey, we've already purchased it, by the way, and it's already exempt because,
It's owned by a nonprofit,
Exempt because they purchased it.
and they're not gonna
This
develop.
this
it.
activity, this action tonight, or potential action tonight, isn't going to change
I
that.
don't want to sound like I'm not for conservation, I really am. However, in the town of Essex, I believe the last meeting we discussed, we've already had 59% of our land in the town of Essex that's already in conservation.
43.
The open space plan, so I actually printed this and highlighted it so I would get an exact number for you. So just to be clear, the first page of the open space plan, because I want to be fair, does say this 2016 to 2023 update to the Essex Open Space and Recreation Plan proposes to continue efforts of the 2007 plan to preserve and protect the scenic character of Essex's open space that make our town such a unique and wonderful place to live. Want to make sure that we're clear about its, mission statement here. But then it does say down At the bottom, I believe it's page 9, this is listed as 1, but as you read through, despite development since 1951, 81.9% of the town's land remains as open space, with 35% permanently protected from development, and another 17.9% with development restrictions. Unrestricted open space constitutes 29% of the land in Essex. So the actual number that I can find in the open space plan, without my down and dirty calculations, is 52.9% to be safe when last week.
Protected.
Permanently protected. So it's a big number. And so I was going to argue, I kind of did, again, some dirty math here and have some issues with the way that it rolls off the taxes. I know that this particular parcel isn't a huge number, but to say that, I guess my issue is that when we come to this table, oftentimes you hear us talking about finances. And I'm forever saying, like, this is burdening the taxpayer, this is rolling on the shoulders of the taxpayer, these big increases are a problem. So this was one more issue. I was going to say, well, rolling it off the tax rate is putting it on the taxpayer, it's going to be dispersed. I did, again, some calculations I was showing Brendan, but for each time we take off another percentage, everyone else's taxes go up. So I was concerned about that, but what I'm hearing is it doesn't matter whether it has a conservation, it's already done.
But it
So
is a good topic. I don't know if we want to spend a
But how
few
do we
minutes talking about
Sorry,
that
Greenbelt,
issue.
but how do we stop it from happening?
You stop them
without
from buying
approval?
land, you're not going to stop it, is what I'm hearing at this moment.
Well, I don't know that that's true. I mean, Kurt Gartner had some good comments in there that, there are values to the property, public value, the trails that exist, farming, timber, things of that nature that provide some benefit to the town. And maybe what we should be doing is ensuring that if there's not going to be any tax revenue coming from that property, at least the residents get something valuable.
Well, it sounds like they keep it open for public
But,
access.
I mean, if that's some,
I'm happy to, when Chair is ready, I'm happy to answer any and all of these questions and to provide some perspective if that's welcome.
Yeah, we'd love it. I mean, obviously you hear that Alva and I are concerned about the tax aspect, and Peter's bringing in, how can we benefit
Yeah.
the town in some way?
I guess what I would start with the reality that the vast majority of this acreage was undevelopable backland. So this was appraised as potentially a single house lot.
Can I ask,
the
when was
Hoopers-
that done?
In the Hoopers field. So these are woodlots that are on the borderline between Gloucester and Essex. This was not road frontage ready to be turned into a subdivision.
And
So
that's why it went to MECT, because they're collecting all the old woodlots
Right.
and stuff, yeah.
Right. And I think I completely appreciate the concerns about tax revenue and about municipal finances. Again, this is acreage in two communities. A lot of it was been in Chapter 61 forestry. A lot of it is not taxed at a high rate, given that these are back woodlots. I would certainly say that a lot of people live in towns like Essex, not only to hope to keep their finances in check and to not pay huge taxes, but because of the natural beauty and because of that open space, because of the marsh, because of the woods, because of access to trails. That's what we're about, protecting water quality, protecting wildlife habitat, making sure all of our property is open, free of charge to the public from dawn till dusk. That conservation restriction, in addition to our mission, will guarantee that that's the case forever. So I totally appreciate where you're coming from. I think with respect to these parcels in particular in this area, they check every box you would want to check in an open space plan. Rare species habitat, some of the best forest land in the Commonwealth, the headwaters of Eben Creek, wetlands, public access. It has all of the components you'd be looking for when deciding to acquire and protect open space based upon an open space plan. I would be hard-pressed to think that large numbers of the population of Essex would look at land like this and think it should be turned into something other than what it's going to be now forever.
So,
But-
Chris, the fact that you own it, Greenbelt owns it, that means it's not taxable.
Right.
If the previous owner owned it and a CR was put on it, then there would be some small amount of tax.
It would be taxable at a much smaller amount.
Yeah.
It was probably in 61A anyway.
Anyway, yeah.
Okay, so we were getting taxes, but not as, not full value, yeah.
But at least some. And if you're getting some value out of it as well, you know, I mean, we can't have the whole town like that for sure.
And I feel like it's a blindside because these things were done without, it came to us after it was already, signatures were signed.
But
That's
they
the,
can buy whatever they want, you know, we don't approve purchases by Greenbelt.
So, Chris, answer me this. What I'm hearing is that this is primarily landlocked. These are old woodlots. So this is landlocked, correct, and non-developable?
The Hooper's Field at the end of Forest Avenue was the one location where there could have potentially been a house. The rest of the acreage is accessed via old woods roads and trails and is woodlots.
Woodlots, non-developable. I mean, the topography itself probably makes it a fortune if you ever wanted to blast enough to get in there to build, and you wouldn't have frontage.
Right. You all have been out in those woods. It's ledge and wetlands and.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, it's a little misleading then, right? Because you can't develop it anyway. I understand protection, so we want to protect it, but it wasn't developable anyway. So you're really protecting something that didn't need protecting because it was protected by its own natural state.
But you
Yeah,
never
I'm
know
not sure,
100
I'm not
years
sure
from
that
now what the
misleading is a word
regulations
that
are
I
gonna
would
be.
use. I think there's land, there are huge tracts of the Great Marsh that are permanently protected, including land that's protected by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the refuge and other places where you wouldn't be able to build a house. I would be hard pressed to say that it's not threatened because it can't immediately be turned into residential development. Land's threatened for all sorts of reasons. And frankly, what we're about is putting together large areas of land that can have ecological integrity, connected trails that are beyond just a loop in someone's backyard, and trying to get some scale. And that's what this is really about. So, I do think, the net of this is that we did extinguish one residential building possibility, but the remainder of this is ensuring that a patch of the woods that's adjacent to a huge patch of woods running over into Gloucester is permanently protected.
Yeah, so the fact that Greenbelt raised funds to purchase this means that it's a higher level than just a homeowner's putting a CR on it, and that type of thing. So these types of properties, I think, are, they're sort of self-screening what the high-end properties are, trustees, Audubon, refuge. But the CRs, I think, are the ones that we have to really scrutinize a little bit to see if we're getting value out of a CR or not. I think something like this, we can't do anything about. They bought the property, they own it, and they're nonprofit.
Right.
I don't know why they need to put a CR on it, but whatever.
But if they're not going to, it sounds like it doesn't matter. I mean, our only concern at this level is going to be the loss of tax income, or not, because we're going to be taxing just our residents at a higher rate.
That's right.
So we're just overtaxing our
I
residents
totally
by
agree.
shifting that burden.
Totally agree.
But it's no different than the conversations we have at this table about a split tax rate between residential and commercial. We won't do it because you're unnecessarily burdening your businesses.
Yep.
So it's kind of the same thing, just
agree.
slightly different.
I agree.
So if we really have no say over that, and it's owned by a nonprofit, and they're going to shift the taxes anyway,
Doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter.
why would I approve it?
You didn't have to come,
You don't-
you
don't
didn't have
ha-
to put a CR on it, or did you?
So the Conservation Partnership Grant from the State Division of
Okay.
Conservation
Okay,
Services
because of the funding sources. they
requires that a
required
conservation restriction be put on, and as you know, in the Commonwealth,
Yeah,
a CR going on private land requires the approval of the City Council in Gloucester and the selectmen here in Essex.
So can
if
you
you-
tell us the percentage of funding source from a grant from the CR?
So we purchased the property for $611,000, and $175,000 came from the state.
If we didn't approve the CR, would further or future grant funding from this department not be looked at as favorably?
I can't speak for the state. I do think they would ask a lot of questions about it, to be honest.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
This puts me sitting like right on top of the fence. I don't want to be not for conservation, but at the same time, why come to us after you've already done it?
They,
And I
it's
get it,
not
so-
after they did it. I mean, they have to
It's
do
already
it.
sold.
I know, but because of the funding source, they're required. If they raised the money all by themselves, they wouldn't have to put a CR on it, and you probably wouldn't, because you know that you're not gonna, your mission is not gonna change.
In the normal circumstance, we wouldn't put an additional CR on land that we've bought. We're certainly never opposed to that. I will offer my apology for not coming to the board earlier as a point of information earlier in the project. My sense was that given that we were not requesting town funding for the project, which would, if that were the normal case, as we've done in the past, we have certainly been in front of all boards and committees to talk about that, so I will take responsibility for that, and I apologize for that. I do want to just very, very briefly talk about this notion of shifting a tax burden, because I appreciate that. I'm not a taxpayer in Essex, but I'm a taxpayer in Hamilton, so we've got similar issues. I don't think it should be lost on folks that the land that we own and protect forever provides very real, very tangible, very measurable ecosystem services, cooling, water supply protection, public recreation, wildlife habitat, scenic resources, things that add tangibly to the quality of life in communities like Essex. And so I appreciate the property tax calculation, but I also would want to have conversations about the value of protecting properties like this that add meaningfully to places like Essex. I really appreciate everyone's time and all of your consideration.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think there's huge value in that. But for the person writing the check every quarter that's struggling to pay their taxes, when we shift tax
Sure.
burden, that's a real issue, and we hear it time and time again. So,
And 52.9 does not include this 40 acres. This will increase that number, correct?
that is correct.
So that's where my concern is, that that's over 50% of our land mass is non-taxable. Holy moly, how much further can a town go on if we keep having land going into conservation?
For a lot of towns, it's manageable, but Essex is so small, and there's so much mandated requirements for police and fire and DPW and water quality and all that kind of stuff, that there's no economy of scale, and so that it becomes more burdensome, and it's almost impossible to look at it and say, when is enough protected open space doing all the things that we want it to do, and adding to it is not going to do that much more. And I think maybe leaving it to Greenbelt to assess and raise funds puts a premium on that property as opposed to, like I said, just a general CR from a homeowner. But it is a real conundrum with how much open space is too much, or you're not getting the value back and you're losing value from it, and it's almost impossible to determine that.
So Chris, any good business plan obviously does projections, and you look at things further out. So at this point, is Greenbelt looking at any other large parcels in the town of Essex that you're looking to secure?
Ooh, good question.
Greenbelt has completed a land conservation prioritization for all 34 cities and towns in the county. There remains significant acreage of, woods, watershed protection land. There are parcels that are of interest for permanent conservation.
How many acres in the town of Essex at this point is part of that management plan?
I don't know. I'd be happy to have a meeting with you, with the Open Space Committee, at another one of these meetings, but I don't have that number off the top of my
And
head.
it's all owned by somebody, so they never know when somebody is gonna say, okay, we're ready to sell. It may be 100 years from now, it may be 100 days from now,
Right, but
You
I
never
think
know.
that's part of the
I know.
point, right? Is it
I
never
agree.
hits the market. If it hit the open market and someone had an opportunity to buy it, it's going to...
The town.
Including the town. You may have a different vision for that. And, this has some significant environmental impacts, it sounds like. But now, answer me this. If this board chose not to vote in favor of this conservation restriction this evening, what would that mean for you? Since it sounds like part of your
Be disappointed.
disappointed, but would it impact you in any way?
I would have to discuss with the Commonwealth what their opinion was of the town of Essex not approving a CR on half of the project.
Yeah, I think to prove a point, make a stand on a property where it doesn't make any difference is the wrong message to send. I think that, you know, we really need to talk about this issue. It's a important issue, and it's coming to a head. I know with a lot of other towns, you're probably hearing this in other towns as well, where they're concerned about, we have so much open space, we're not getting, the Pink House is a classic one, you know, up in Newbury.
In Newbury.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are concerns, but I think people also understand that continuing to protect open space is a part of the balance. Because
And I don't think
it's
anybody on
not
this
a-
board doesn't understand that. The concern is, again, we're at 52.9% now, we're adding 40 more acres, and if Greenbelt keeps going for these other towns, these other properties, what acreage does the town have that we could potentially have as a tax revenue going forward for the next 100 years? Or 20 years?
I would just ask, with respect to this particular property, and I understand that you haven't all been out there, and I'm happy to take a walk with you out there. This is not acreage under any circumstance that I can imagine that the town of Essex would go out there and say, this is where an industrial park should go, or this is where a subdivision should go. It is not, the land does not have the characteristics to support any of that. So the fact that you're interested in developing tax revenue somewhere, I appreciate 100%. It was never going to be on this land because of its basic characteristics.
Yeah, this is the wrong property to pick this fight with, and, you know, but there are so many competing things. There's the tax revenue, there's the lack of housing. I mean, these are all things that we need to discuss, but this is not, I don't think, is the property. I was thinking maybe it was if it was just a simple CR, not knowing that Greenbelt had owned it, but it isn't, I don't think, because it doesn't matter what.
And it may not be, but if we don't have this conversation starting
time,
now,
every time,
every
this is what
single
we're gonna be
time, this
dealing
is
with.
what we're gonna face, right? So they're gonna be back before us and say, we
need
bought
to-
this
we need to
property
be-
and we
We
need
need
a
to be
CR
integrated into the.
into the conversation before it happens.
Yes.
And how do we do that?
We rely on Chris and Greenbelt to come to us.
You're asking
early
me
on.
right now. We'd be happy to participate in any way that makes sense for you to have this conversation, whether it's with this board, whether it's a standalone meeting, whether it's with the Open Space Committee or the Conservation Commission or others. We're happy to be a part of that.
Right, and I mean, I don't think that though with open space, we understand what their mission is. I have 192 pages of that, right? This board has to approve the CR, and this board is where
It should be with the board.
it should be with the Board of Selectmen. We're the ones that are approving it, and we're also the ones that are approving, you know, that are talking about the budget and the impact of taxes, so.
As I said, I'm willing to meet with anyone. You let me know who to meet with, and I'm ready.
At a critical point in time in a purchase of a property is maybe when you could get on the agenda and just discuss what's happening, and we can then start to assess what we think of the property and its value to the town, and after some period of time, say, you know, I don't think we're gonna give you a CR on that, and, you know, let you make a decision on what you wanna do early on, so that you're not wasting time or whatever, you know? And I'm not sure, we may not do that, but we may, I don't know. Does that sound reasonable?
Sounds reasonable.
Yeah, I mean,
But I'm still not sure, my understanding as this is unfolding is that it's not really gonna matter. It's still,
no, I think it will if we get in early enough, because they may not buy it if they know they're not gonna
Unless it's a rule or a
CR.
policy, just asking somebody to do something,
Well,
doesn't mean they're gonna do it.
But they rely a lot on state funding for every single.
And we've been your neighbors in Essex for an awfully long time, so I don't need to be compelled by a rule or anything other than an invitation to come and meet with you. So thank you for that.
And I appreciate all of the Greenbelt properties. I've been to a lot of them, Manchester, Essex Woods, the trustees. It's just a matter of, again, how much at what point do we say, okay, you've had enough breakfast today. You've had 3 bowls of cereal, you're done. I don't know. I
Well,
mean,
that's what we're asking them, to come to us early on in their process, when they first start negotiating with a homeowner, and they want to start fundraising, we can look at it, and we can do an assessment of that property and determine if we think that there's a better value for that to the town, you know, what we're talking about here. And say, hey, you know, I mean, we think, we won't approve a CR, you know, 5 years from now, whenever you get the funding and purchase it and all that sort of stuff. You can go that route, but this is what we're gonna do. And it's not that it's gonna stop them necessarily, but it will give the state a bad taste in its mouth towards Essex and Greenbelt buying in Essex.
So you're saying ask for permission, not forgiveness. Come to us before, so that you
I
have a
think.
feeling of whether or not we're in favor of it on that particular parcel.
Yeah, and we really need to do some assessment of why that property is valuable to the
Is-
town of Essex.
Or is deemed not
Besides-
valuable to the town.
Yeah, besides open space.
Right.
If it's not valuable for something, if it's valuable for something besides open space. That's all, I think.
And I just don't know that what is valuable or not valuable today is valuable or not valuable in 10 years from now.
Well, that's the thing, or 100 years.
We're making decisions on something that is, I don't want to lose any of the open space we currently have. However, again, I go back to how much more can we afford as a town?
Well, that's what we need to look at.
Well, and I think we need to make decisions for the here and now, not what's going to happen in 100 years, so to speak, even though I'm always thinking 10 years down the road. I think that we need to figure out tonight, so.
And I would like to know, I mean, so what do we assess it on? Is it based on access? Well, we know that it has access.
We don't know at this
I mean,
point. We
but
need
that's,
to,
that's what I'm saying. Before we can make that decision, I think, you know, that we, in this case, it's probably a done deal, but I do think that we need to understand what is considered, yes, we know that if there's wetlands, okay, well, we know wetlands can't be adjusted. That's deemed as land.
yeah, I think that, you know, we would probably have to have a consultant help us determine what are the values. It knows both sides of the coin, the town expenses, the town issues, as well as the property issues. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do, for sure. But if we really want to investigate this fully, we need to, you know, understand it fully. It's becoming an issue. And I think, Chris, you'll find that in other towns, that it's becoming an issue as you start to move forward, you know, because towns that have a high rate of protected open space that's non-taxable, and they don't have a lot of, you know, high tax properties, you know, they can't afford it as much as they used to be able to. So it's not just rote approving the CR. It probably hasn't come to your attention yet, but I think it will, you know.
No, I've been doing this for 20-something years, and it's always part of the conversation, so I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah.
I will end.
Event, I would ask for your support on this one, and my sincere interest in having more conversations with you about this.
I will entertain a motion to approve the conservation restriction for request from the Greenbelt for the conservation restriction that will permanently protect the land as open space. Greenbelt will be responsible for the land stewardship, and MECT will be tasked with monitoring and enforcing all the terms of the conservation restriction into perpetuity. For the land located through the 68 Grove Street Trust in the Penoyer family, which is slightly more than 40 acres in Essex.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much for your time.
Sorry to hassle you, but, you know, it is what it is.
It's
Do
your,
you-
it's
do you
your
need
right
to-
to hassle me.
Do you need us to sign anything?
There is a signature page. Your signatures need to be notarized, so whatever the most convenient.
So
way
if
is-
you want to leave that with me,
Yep.
I will, do you need all 3 board members to be notarized or just the chair?
All 3 would be great.
Okay, so if you leave that document with me, I will leave it with the town clerk,
Okay.
and we can each come in during the week and have her notarize us, and then we'll have Brendan get that back to you, or Pam, whoever gets it. Perfect, thank you. Have a good evening.
This can't keep happening.
No, I totally agree. There's certain properties that it should happen on, and some properties that it shouldn't.
Susan, if you'd like to join us at the podium, with my apologies for running behind. When you speak, I'm going to have you just speak about 6 or 8 inches away from the microphone because we are being recorded, and the people that are joining us online or when it's recorded after, they need to be able to hear you. So this is Susan Work of Vita Bella to discuss a request for outdoor seating. So Susan, if you want to give us a little bit of information, and I do have your application before me.
Okay, I'm just looking to put potentially 7 tables of seating of 4 outside on the lawn area.
And so for the board's benefit, prior to the change in law, when an establishment wanted to put new seating, even if it was outdoors, as part of the licensed premises, there was a time during COVID where it could be done on a temporary basis. And I believe that even now, the board could still work that out. But the board in the past has said, after the COVID special rules passed, the board said that future requests for alterations of premises should come through the permanent alteration process. The board said that, not knowing that the state, of course, was going to make a change, that such changes now do not, or such alterations now do not need to go through the ABCC. So we have one applicant, and I think we have another applicant that's going to be talking to us at this same meeting tonight, asking, what does that look like now? And unfortunately, the board really hasn't had a chance to discuss what it looks like under the new change in law. The last thing the board said on it was, it needs to be a permanent change of alteration of premises that would go through the local licensing board and through the ABCC. So it's difficult to determine exactly what the requirements should be. One model would be that you would require the applicant to provide all the same documents that they would have prior to the change in law, which are basically state application forms and certain other documents to go with it, and then go through the process of determining whether it should be approved by the board. And with the change in law, it would end there and it wouldn't go on to the ABCC. That's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum would be to determine just what the vestige of those temporary COVID rules is really still remaining. That would probably represent the least onerous end of the spectrum, okay? But the board really has not had a chance to think about this at all after the change in law. And so it's hard to really articulate right now what the board would want to see.
So given that the law has just changed, does it make sense to, in the course of the next 2 weeks before our next meeting, reach out to council and get some feedback on what things we can incorporate or which things we shouldn't? So if we're no longer going to go with a permanent alteration of premises, and it could be potentially seasonal or temporary, if those are options, and if so, I don't think there's a need to reinvent the wheel on applications. We already have one that we've used successfully, unless somebody's created a new one. But maybe we reach out to council to get more advice.
Yes, because they represent a great number of municipalities. They have already probably started to field many different questions about the spectrum of things that are possible. I just don't know if you feel comfortable right now making any type of decision, not even knowing what the process should look like.
I need a few more questions just on this property in general. So you're talking 7 tables with 4 seating each. Is that in addition to what's already inside?
Yes.
So it's in addition.
And in this case, I've already heard from the Department of Public Works that the necessary amount of sewer flow is available to the property.
For another 28.
Yes,
Yes.
because at the time that the sewer came through, that particular establishment had more seating than it does now. And so the establishment gets to stay at that higher level, even if they're not utilizing all the seating. So that would open that up.
And
But
what
there are
about the
other
number of,
things.
Bathroom stalls, based on, is that state plumbing?
State plumbing code is required bathrooms, so we would need to get an overall total seat count for how many bathrooms they require.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole list of things that,
Right,
they
well,
need to
in
look at.
departments that we would, when we went through, so Susan, just for your benefit to understand what we're talking about, when we went through the permanent alteration of premises project or conversations in the last few years, as we started having the conversations and more departments heard that the conversations were being had at this board, they were saying, well, hey, wait a minute, we have comments, this is, so we had the building inspector who said, I need to know that you're altering something because now we have issues with occupancy limits and we need new stamped engineered drawings. And then we had the plumbing inspector saying, well, wait a minute, when you start adding seats, we need to talk about how many bathrooms are required under state plumbing code. We had Conservation Commission saying, if we're now bringing things outside, we need to protect the wetlands because most of our restaurants sit right on the Great Marsh or the river, they're within the buffer zone. So those were issues for conservation. The Board of Health said, we need to know if there's any changes with food code or grease trap capacity or things like that. Department of Public Works wanted to know about sewer flow, which Brendan just mentioned that you're fine with sewer flow. Fire department needed to know about any adequate fire alarms or lighting or anything in the case of an emergency. The chief of police wanted to know about it from a safety perspective, making sure that there wasn't any, if where you were putting the tables would have direct access if a car lost control on 133 and was going to plow into your front lawn. Would that be an issue for the police? Would they ask you to put up bollards or something to, or cement barriers, which you've seen in the city when they eat on the sidewalks? And then from the Board of Selectmen's point of view, it was all about, being the local licensing authority and making sure that there was just the security plan, the management plan, making sure that you could see the patrons coming and going, that minors weren't being served, things like that. So we had a list of different departments that took interest in what we were approving before it got to the point of the actual approval. So in doing so, we made a list of those so that we wouldn't just approve things without everybody kind of getting their day in court, so to speak. So I think that's what Peter and I are referring to. Alva wasn't on the board at that time, but that's what we're kind of referring back to. And I think that these were all really important when you start talking about a permanent alteration because it permanently alters all of those things. But now if we're talking about the change in the laws and it's either seasonal or temporary or maybe still has to be permanent in Essex because of sewer flow, I don't know. But I think that's really the answer is we don't know until we talk to council to make sure we get those things answered. And so I think what makes sense is for us to investigate that further and then ask you to come back to a meeting. I will say that I did review the application and it's limited in the description of, where it's going to go. I do have your picture, so I see what you want to do, but we would need some more information, security plan, management plan, how you're going to supervise, that stuff, a total accounting of a description of the premises in general. So that would be the inside, the outside. And then you would potentially go to each of these boards or department heads and get this information kind of checked off on the checklist. But we don't even know that we're going to use this anymore, I guess, until we really talk to council and see if this is still.
Yeah.
So, Maureen, I know that your hand is up. As soon as we finish with Susan, I'm going to have you come up and ask. If you're going to ask, Maureen, you need to go up to the microphone.
So it's on tape.
So I would like to know, Susan, what are you planning to serve at those tables? Because I haven't heard that here.
We would create a different menu just for outside, more lighter food.
Are you going to serve food at the tables?
Yes.
Is it your hope that you serve?
Maureen, no, I'm just going to chat with Susan about an alteration of premises because we're not doing that.
Let me ask this question. Are you allowed to just put a table outside at your business and not serve anything? A bench or a table or seat?
Not necessarily. It depends on whether there are other jurisdictions that would have a rule that you would have to at least, apply so they could review what it is you wanted to do.
So you're not allowed to put a table outside of your business or a bench without coming to this board, is that correct?
It has nothing to,
Business.
no, I said there could be other jurisdictions in the town, other departments that might require you to get a permit or something like the Board of Health, because it would be potentially for food service. This board is involved because the request is to expand the alcohol service.
Oh, is it to expand the alcohol service? Okay, I didn't hear that. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you, thank you.
So Susan,
Can I just ask a couple of questions
Sure,
also?
of course.
So does the application, I mean, is this going to be a covered area, or is it just going to be a temporary for the summer type of thing?
It would just be for the seasonal.
Not tented?
not tented.
No.
And then as far as, and I know that we'd have to look at the boards and who would have to approve what, but as far as getting your servers to get outside, haven't spent way too much time at that property. Is it coming from back of the kitchen? I'm just really confused about the distance between where the kitchen's located and where the land, where you'd put the tables, because this is a large piece of property, and I'm not sure where you'd put 7 tables.
There's a side door, and they would go out the side door, which the seating area is going to be right there.
So you're hoping to put it near the side door?
Yeah.
Will you pass it down to Alva so she can see that? Alva.
Yeah, no, it's here.
Yeah, oh, okay. Right, yeah.
I'll let you do your thing.
So, Susan, I think at this point, we have your application to add alcohol service outdoors. And I think does it seem appropriate for the board to confer with council and make sure that we,
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the other thing is that, 7 tables, you're going to have probably one server, maybe 2 if it's really busy, and it's that alcohol thing, where it's so close to the parking lot, if somebody's not out there, get your vodka out of your car and pour it into your drink type of
well, and
thing.
that will be part of, one of the documents missing here is the management plan.
Right.
So we need a security plan and a management plan that isn't included in a, potentially a fencing plan. So we.
Right, so we have a partial application right now, not a complete
Not a
application.
complete application. So once we get that, that may answer more questions, but I don't want to see the applicant jump through hoops until we talk to council and see what has been required from other cities and towns so that we can try to be somewhat in line with what they're doing. So I think what we'll do, Susan, is speak with council. Once we get some sort of input back, we can, Brendan or Pam will reach out to you and let you know what else we need to make a complete application. And then the board will talk about the requirements that council's recommending. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Maureen Woodman, I apologize for the delay. We're running a couple of minutes late, but if you'd like to discuss your request for outdoor dining.
So I'm here today to continue the discussion about outdoor dining at Woodman's. Actually, on the advice of 2 of the selectmen, both of them said to me, did I see the laws when they changed, one being Alva and one being Ruthie? And they told me that I should come here today and talk about it. So I did wait to hear back to discuss all this. I did my homework on all of these things. I have submitted plans and all these things, and it's today supposedly coming down to toilets and space. again, Ruthie was going to check. I talked to the state plumbing department today myself. I talked to their liaison there that's dealing with this. And I've worked really hard to do everything that you're asking Susan to do right now, as far as setting up management plans, security plans, stanchions, ropes, parking, speed bumps, all kinds of things. One of the things I said to Ruthie today is I don't want to throw other people under the bus that are in this town right now. I've done a little bit of homework about how many water closets and how many seats and who has speed bumps in front of their picnic tables, who does have outside dining, who doesn't, who has licensing, who doesn't have licensing. So I'm trying to really represent not only Woodman's right now, but probably the other 14 restaurants in this town to try to help them to get where they need to be to make more money in the season. As I explained to Ruthie today by doing my homework, there's a lot between permanent alteration of premise, temporary alteration of premise. I worked very hard today to find out the differences with the states because this is a federal law that was passed in Washington, D.C., in the state, in the Senate, as well as the House of Representatives that was worked on very hard by the National Restaurant Association. Then it came down to states and it was signed by the governor. So a lot of people have done a lot of different homework on this. But as I said to Ruthie today, I did not hold my cards close to my chest. I told her where I'm going to come. So right now, according to the law for the outdoor cocktails, I can sell a clam plate at Woodman's and a rum and coke with a cover on it. You can leave the restaurant and stay on my private property and eat it and drink it, and I don't need anything. So I want you to tell me that. The outdoor cocktail license in the state of Massachusetts.
So the guidance that we got, and this is part of the reason that we need to talk with council, is it says that when a cocktail is mixed for takeout, if you will,
Yep.
it's for off-premises consumption.
Yep.
What does that mean?
Off-premises meaning the building of the
The
restaurant.
licensed premises, or does it mean the property that, on which the business sits? We don't know. This is brand new. Okay, so
Brand
you're-
new for you.
yes, you're making an assertion that that person could take that takeout drink and go sit away from the building on your private property. I don't know whether that's true or not.
Well, they can't take it to a public property. So if you read the law,
It says off premises, okay? I don't know what that means.
you can't go, well, you can read it, you'll find it. I did my homework today. So you can't.
All it
take
says is off premises. We don't really know what the definition of that is, okay? This is why we need more guidance, because it is a change.
So I don't know, Brendan, which challenge to absorb right now. Okay? I can continue to go for the outside dining, which, as I told Ruthie today, again, there are other people in this town right now that do have 7 picnic tables that do not have permission. They do not have barriers for parking in front of them. They do not have stanchions or ropes. There's some people that have outside dining with alcohol right now that's attached to their building that have license, and there's some that have it that are not. There are all these different things that are happening, pre-COVID, after COVID, during COVID. Once again, Woodman's wants to do the right thing, okay? I have 17 ladies' rooms and 14 men's room at 119 Main Street. When I do the math of all my seats, I have enough water closets. Again, another thing for you, Susan, that you're going to have to find out. If you do not have a toilet for the 25 seats that you're going to add for female, you have to add another bathroom, and you're going to have to add another men's room. So even if you went through all these bells and whistles, they're going to make you put a toilet in there, because if I'm correct, there's not that many toilets at your restaurant that will serve the seating. If I'm really correct, I don't even think her toilets match, but that's okay, because we're grandfathered in, okay? So there's all these things, Brendan, that keep going here, there, jump through.
Exactly, I agree with you.
But I've already been jumping through these hoops now for 4.5 years, okay? I do have a tent for outside dining since 1971, and as I told Ruthie today, Woodman's files a permit with the town of Essex to put that tent up, to put that tent down, to make sure it has fire-protected sides, lighting. I put in all the handicap things that you asked for me to do. I made all the openings that you asked me to do. I did all those things. I tried to get the toilets out there, but I was denied to use porta potties. I keep hearing, like, do this, do that, do this, do that. So I'm not even to the point anymore that I want it. I want it. I want it because it's correct. And it seems like no matter what I do, there's always something else that wasn't told to me as I get to this point. And again, I feel for Susan. That's why I'm here with her, because I want her to understand you might do this, 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 and this, but then they forgot to tell you about that. So you come in and you're ready and you're willing to make the investment and you're looking to try to further yourself. You're looking to grow your business. You understand now that COVID changed the world in many, 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 many different industries, right? And one thing in our industry is that people realize they like to be outside. So somebody took the time to lobby in Washington, D.C. to do all this work. And it still is going to come down to the state. I understand that. But as I told Ruthie today, always the stopper for Woodman's was that it was a public way with the ABC. The ABC has now waived. I also talked to the ABC. All those things are leveled. They're stopped. They're blocked. They're passed, right? So now's the time to come back and ask again, what do we need to do to make this happen?
Exactly.
And again,
yeah.
I'm back to toilets. I have 168 seats at that
Maureen,
tent.
I don't think we said anything about toilets tonight. I think you brought that up.
Ruthie did.
No, when we were
Ruth
talking,
did.
I
She
told,
texted me today about
I
the
told
toilets.
her that I spoke with Rick Currier this morning, and I said, I sent you the guidance from the state and from council.
And when this board approved the application that you made not long ago,
3 years ago.
when they approved that application, the toilet discussion was in there, and it was made a condition of that approval. Then the ABCC decided they were not going to approve it. Fast forward now, we're in a new situation.
That's right.
With a change in law.
That's
And
right.
this board needs to become better advised as to how that needs to be handled, and that's what we were talking about earlier with the other applicant. And I think that's the next step.
Right. So the toilet discussion, I reached out to Rick Currier and said, now that this has changed, is anything, can we move forward? And he said, the state plumbing code hasn't changed, so for me, they still need toilets. But now that we're having a different discussion, we're going to consult with council, that may change this. So what I texted you this morning might be different than what council gives us for
Let's go
information.
forward again. Let's take the alcohol out of the mix. Did we only need the toilets for outside seating for alcohol?
That would have been up to the Board of Health to determine whether,
Because-
if you were formalizing that area. Now, you already had the area with the tables there.
I have tables.
Yep.
I have
And the difference
food.
was you were going to be serving alcohol.
I have Coca-Cola,
Yep, understood.
and I don't have 8 water closets.
The difference was you were going to be serving alcohol, and the approach the board took at the time was we need to go through each department, because they started, as Ruth said, they started to come to the board saying, well, wait a minute, if you've got this application in front of you, we need to make sure that this happens, that happens. Yeah, the board can grant an alcohol permit or an expansion of an existing permit, but that doesn't mean that they have any authority to approve other jurisdictions.
So let's go to the other elephant in the room. How far does the toilet have to be from the outside seating?
I don't really know. I think the
Well,
board,
You do, because you made me do that 3 years ago.
that's what the plumbing inspector, he's had some,
You told me that the toilets at Woodman's were too far from the tent.
yes, but I'm trying to tell you now that under these new rules, the whole thing needs to be looked at again. That's what I said earlier.
Well, I don't know if you know what I need to ask the right questions to your council in order to help Woodman's get what they need. Never mind the other 13 establishments here and what they need, because it's really not apples to apples. Each one is going to have a different set of circumstances. So how are you going to go to council one time to try to help the multiple people that are trying to have alcohol out on the street if you don't know?
Right now, there are 2 establishments expressing interest, and we know generally what each one is looking to do. There's no one else before us asking about anything. So it'll be fairly straightforward.
But what about the restaurants that you have that aren't asking, that are already doing outside seating?
Well, I'm sure that this process will inform that if someone does come forward, but we need to have some general guidance from council, and we don't have that yet.
So you're saying, let it be for how long?
The board will bring this topic back up at its next meeting, which is on July 8th.
So July 8th, you're going to bring it up for discussion? Or you're going to have council answers by July 8th?
They're going to be advised by council by then. How it unfolds from there, I don't know.
And then how will you notify us?
The board will put this item back on the agenda for the next meeting.
On July 8th?
Correct.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify, there's a question about what is considered on the premise.
Doug, can you just speak a little closer to the microphone? Thank you.
Well, the liquor license is stated what the premise consists of. It says alcohol to be drunk on the premises, and then there's this description of all the, where it can be drunk, and it's just inside the building, so.
Understood, but this is a new law, and I did not see any definition of what on premises means under the new law. I don't know. If you know, we'd be happy, but I'm sure town council will know, because I'm sure this question has come up.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
So both will be on the agenda July 8th.
July 8th, yeah. I'm just going to finish with other business before we go over to the town administrator's report. I will entertain a motion to vote to accept the resignation of Kurt Siebert from the Council on Aging.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I will entertain a motion to vote to accept the resignation of Christopher Wolf from the Finance Committee.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'm going to skip the next one since it's an actual conversation. I'm going to just go through some of the other easier ones. We received a request from the town clerk asking permission to allow the Board of Registrars to solicit names from registered Republicans in Essex to find a potential appointee to the vacancy of the Board of Registrars. Brendan, if you could give a little bit of background on that.
So normally, when the town clerk is trying to help facilitate filling vacant seats on the Board of Registrars, the law prescribes that notices go out to political parties to see if there are any nominees. And generally speaking, we have not seen political parties make these nominations in Essex, and it's not expected at this time. And so the town clerk would like to allow the Board of Registrars to solicit names outside of the political parties.
Outside of political parties?
No, I mean outside of the form,
Outside
like
of
the
the-
party itself making the
Outside.
nomination, okay? At such time that the deadline for the party has expired. That's what this is about, so that she can field people to sit on the board.
And it needs to be a certain Republican, Democrat breakdown?
In this case, I think we're talking about Republicans.
It's Republican Party, yes.
Republican,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
but
So it
that's
seems to me what she's
required.
asking for is permission to be able to actually solicit, like, send an email or send a letter to Republicans, registered
Right,
Republicans.
you have
Right.
interest in this.
Would you be
Right.
interested in serving?
And then the appointment is actually made by the selectmen, but right now, we don't have any, the
Nobody
process.
to appoint.
Right,
Right.
Right. And I can tell you that the Republican nominee has been reaching out to people, and no one's been interested at this point. So they have been working diligently to try to find people.
I'm sure, yeah, yeah.
But there has to be at least one Republican.
Right, it looks like they're looking for one Republican member and 2 Democrat members.
Yeah.
And the term is expiring for the Republican member, yep. So do we have any issues with Ann Dunn moving forward?
No?
So I will entertain a motion to grant permission to the town clerk to allow the Board of Registrars to solicit names from a registered Republican in Essex to find a new appointee to the vacancy of the Board of Registrars.
So moved.
Second,
All those in favor?
aye.
Aye. Is there anything not unanticipated that came in at the 11th hour?
I don't have anything. You've done all the appointments?
I'm about to do those
Okay.
next, okay. So,
Is the resignation on here? I just can't find it.
the resignation?
Found it, never mind. See,
Okay.
look at that. Look for the dots that aren't checked.
So I will entertain a motion to approve the appointments for the Finance Committee member and Historic Commission member.
So moved.
Second,
All those in favor?
aye.
Aye. I'm going to have Peter take it. So Peter, if you'll take the appointments for the rest of page 2, all of page 3, in the back of page 4.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve the appointments for Board of Engineers for 1 year, firefighter lieutenant for 1 year, firefighter for 1 year, firefighter probationary for 1 year, firefighter EMT for 1 year. That's it. Somebody want to
Alba, do you want to second that?
Second,
All those in favor?
aye.
Aye, sorry.
And I'll just abstain to make it easy. Okay, perfect. On to licensing. Before us, we have 4 licenses for Woodman's Inc. These are one-day outdoor entertainment licenses. They are listed from the first one, July 10th, from 6 to 8 p.m., listed as non-amplified guitar player and vocalist. The next one, July 17th, 6 to 8 p.m., non-amplified guitar player and vocalist. The next, July 24th, from 6 to 8 p.m., non-amplified guitar player and vocalist. And then July 31st, from 6 to 8 p.m., non-amplified guitar player and vocalist. So just a little bit of discussion before I even go into these. Alva and I, so Peter for you, because we haven't met since we went to an event, but Alva and I had gone to an event at Woodman's a couple of weeks ago, and even though the board had approved a outdoor entertainment license non-amplified, they ended up amplifying it. And so I guess as we talk about these licenses, even though they're listed as non-amplified, I guess I'm not sure that that's really going to happen. So for me, I'm in favor of approving the one to make sure that what's actually been asked for is
And so how
followed.
would we do that? Besides me and you taking a walk down here?
Right. So I don't
It
know.
seems mean, because and again, if it was amplified, and we got down there and it's the same way it was for the event that we went to, I'd have no problem. I think most of the whole town would have no problem. It was professional, or how do you,
The
consider it of-
amplification was?
The amplification was, for the neighbors that were right behind it, barely knew that there was even any implication. But still, they're saying non. Is there a difference in our pricing if somebody says, so there's no difference, it's just a matter of,
No, there's no pricing. It's a matter of setting the precedent that, I would call it the bait and switch, where people don't, like those
Right,
terms. But
so-
you're asking for one thing. I mean, we, not only did that request come in at the 11th hour, we all had to respond to the town administrator outside of a meeting, ratify it, at which point we did discuss that. So, we bent over backwards to make sure that that was a successful event that we all approved and signed a license on, and then we were faked out, you know?
Can we make the subsequent entertainment license contingent on the previous 1, 2, 3? So that if they don't meet the rules of the entertainment license,
Then the next one goes null and void.
The next
The next-
2, 3.
The next, whatever.
Yeah, well, that's what I was getting at, is like, our meetings are July 8th, and then it's not until, I think, the 23rd. So you could approve July 10th and 17th, make sure they're successful, and if they are, then you approve further ones. But if they're not, then we have to call a hearing, and then it
Correct.
turns into, you can't just
You can't
revoke
just,
them. You have
and
to,
you can't just make one contingent on the other. You would have to see a problem and then hold a hearing.
Yeah, and there's a part of me that says, approve these, however, any one of these could be null and void if we find that amplification,
we would have to hold a
Existing.
You'd have to
hearing.
hold a hearing. If you approve them, the only way to stop it from happening later is to hold a hearing.
what law is that?
So what happens, what is our recourse if we grant them and it's amplified?
You hold a hearing. You either hold them accountable, you hold a hearing,
But can you
then,
stop can the police stop the event, or what can we do?
no, because they're entitled to a hearing. So what are you going to do? I mean, I think you would let it play out, have a hearing, and then either we find them, is there enough evidence, are there enough people, and then we don't even have a fine structure. So even if you do have a hearing, all we can do is not grant further applications. So,
And if you're inclined not to grant these, you have to have a hearing. They may request a hearing.
they can request, right?
Yeah, and I'm more in favor of approving with a note to them saying, you say non-amplified, we will request a hearing if we find amplification. And all other events will be canceled.
Not
Or all
unless,
approvals will be canceled. You
You
know what I'm
can't,
saying?
you can't say that.
no, but we cannot approve.
You can just not approve further applications, like
Yeah.
any future
We
applications.
can approve the July 10th one, and if it's not, if it's amplified, we can say, okay, we're not approving the rest.
You'd have to apply, probably approve the July 10th and 17th, because we don't meet again.
Oh, we don't,
Because
okay.
we meet July 8th, but they won't have had the July 10th one yet, and then we don't meet until after the July 17th. So you
Okay.
could approve 2, and then bring back the next Wednesday one, which would be just at the prior Monday, right, 2 days before. Or you could approve the top 3.
And the tent is smaller than the area that they had the event in. I do believe that non-amplified is probably going to be what they're going to do. And it's summer. And it's till 8 o'clock.
Well, you also have a certain
have a
amount of
policy.
days to, they've made an application, there's a
Right.
certain amount of days.
I mean, our policy states that they meet the criteria. They're asking between 6 and 8 PM. So they meet the timing requirement and they say non-amplified. So they do meet all of the requirements of the policy.
Right.
So on face value, there shouldn't be any reason why we don't approve
approve
these
these.
As amplified,
as non-amplified.
non-amplified.
And then
Right.
I guess the board needs to have a meeting of the minds that if we find out, if we get a complaint or there's an issue and it's amplified, we, I guess, have to be on the same page that we're going to have a hearing and we're going to hear it.
I also wonder, as far as, we can't be the first time in history that this has gone on, whether this town or any other town, what's our ability to stop this? What's our fine process?
Well, so that's what we need to talk
If we
about.
did a fine, where does that money go to?
Well, you have to have a hearing before you can find them.
But we can
Correct.
create a policy on fines. We could have a fine structure that if there is an offense and we have a hearing and we could have a fine structure, so that could be something we work on. And Alva, to answer your question, goes to the general fund. Any sort of fine like that would just go back to the general fund. It doesn't go to a specific area.
Okay. I mean, I don't want to have a $25 fine, because you know what?
It's worth it. Yeah, it's worth it.
It's kind of like, you get a parking ticket in Essex, and it's, I'm going history here, by the way, $20, but, oh, you parked in a handicap, here's $150, because I got one of those one time. So, who makes those decisions? I mean, I'm assuming it's us that does the policy and making that decision, or do we go through council and say, what can we do?
You'd have to make certain regulations. Right now, there's just a policy. We'd have to find out what we would ground a fine in and how that would work. But we're going to be talking with council soon anyway, so I
Okay.
can bring this up.
Okay, so,
Yeah, I think that we should approve the first two, and if it's amplified, then we,
And then move the second two to the 22nd of July? We do have a meeting on that night, is that correct?
let me see the.
Just
date
have
of
to
it.
make sure that you act within.
so many days on these.
So, why don't we entertain a motion to approve all four? And then let's be on the same page that if we get complaints or they don't do what they're requesting, then we are all on the same page that we're happy to have a hearing. Do we think that's acceptable?
Yeah.
Okay. So I will entertain a motion to approve the 4 one-day entertainment licenses as listed from 6 to 8 p.m. on the 4 specified dates, non-amplified. And should we receive complaints, we will hold a hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I will entertain a motion to approve the one-day wine and malt for Woodman's Inc. on Wednesday, July 3rd, from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m.
So moved.
Can I just back up one second? Maybe you're not saying, should we receive complaints? Maybe you're saying, should there be evidence that that what was applied
License
for
granted is
did
not
not
followed.
is not followed, you may hold it. You have the ability to hold a hearing anyway,
Okay,
but I wouldn't limit it to
To
if you
complaints.
got a complaint or not.
right. Okay, so we'll amend that motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And did someone want to move the motion on the one-day wine and malt?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I will entertain a motion to ratify the approval of the senior commercial shellfish permit for Michael Ginn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I did not have that license in my folder
For Ginn,
for Ginn.
because all that he had to do, he came up at a previous meeting and he had the wrong year's
Application.
application. So he came in, filled out a completely new application, already had all the backup.
Right.
And I didn't want to hold him up for 2 weeks.
You signed it, but do we need to sign it?
You should still, I didn't sign it.
These.
Yeah, I think we can get it for you to
I just
to
know
sign.
he had the wrong application, but
Right.
I knew he had all the backup, but I
Right.
didn't sign anything.
Yeah, so we'll get it for you to sign for the record.
All right. I will entertain a motion to approve the student shellfish permit for Chase Marshall.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Reminders, the town hall will be closed on Thursday, July 4th, 2024. The next regular Board of Selectmen's meeting will take place on Monday, July 8th, 2024 at 6 p.m., third floor Town Hall. We also had an addition, an invite from the Greater Cape Ann Chamber of Commerce. It looks like there will be a ribbon cutting, bless you. There will be a ribbon cutting ceremony for the Woodman's food truck this Wednesday, June 26th at 5:30. The gathering will be to celebrate Woodman's 6 generations of family heritage with the new food truck, Woodman's on Wheels. So that's just an invite that we received, and we got an email on that.
Ruth, you have a couple to sign there.
Okay, perfect. And then I'm going to go back to Brendan's report, and part of the report will be the discussion about the chief hiring process.
No, it's under other
It's
business.
other, but we'll do it right
Yeah,
after you do
sure.
yours.
Did you do the appointments?
Yes.
We did.
Okay, so the public water supply well improvement project update. As the board knows, we went out to bid a second time with a reduced scope for this project. And unfortunately, we only got one bidder. The first time, we got 2 bidders, both over budget. The second time, even though we reduced the scope, we got just 1 bidder over budget. There's been a question raised as to whether we could take the scope that the bidder bid on and reduce the scope post-bid and then determine if the bidder would assent to that. So in other words, bring it down into the range where we could actually afford it. I have not heard back yet from our engineer as to whether that bidder is willing to do that. In addition, once we hear back, I have to determine whether town council would deem that appropriate. And it's very important because we're also dealing with federal rules here, and the federal rules are slightly different than mass procurement rules. Certainly, if the bidder comes back and says, well, we're not willing to assent to that, you might as well just reject the bid, then we're done. If they entertain the idea of actually doing some of the work for us, then I'd have to get it reviewed by town council to make sure that it passes muster with mass procurement law and with whatever the federal rules say.
You don't have to put it out to bid again.
Right.
Reduced, yeah.
But let's say that either we can't legally do that or the bidder is not interested in doing that. If that becomes the case, then I suppose we could reduce the scope again and go back out to bid. This project is being funded by the American Rescue Plan Act money that the town received from the federal government, about $1.1 million. That money needs to be completely obligated, meaning at least under contract, by the end of the calendar year. I have also verified that another way of looking at this would be to spend all of that money on something the town is already doing, including operating expenses, okay? So that we spend the money and we don't have any money left on the table. That money will then fall to free cash, albeit about a year later, next summer. And then the town meeting could appropriate that money for water projects or any other type of project. So there's a real hierarchy here, right? I have to determine whether we could we could do anything with the bid that we have. Will the bidder do it? Is it legal to do so? I also want to determine whether some of the ARPA money could be used on a change order for work that's ongoing at the water filtration plant, because there are other things at the water plant that weren't part of that project scope that we might want to get done. And if we can verify that we can legally do that, then you might spend a portion of it on that. At the end of the day, if we get too close to the end of the calendar year, we can spend the money on operations. For instance, you could pay one monthly bill from the regional school district, which is an operational cost, and then you know that since that money's already in the budget, it will fall to free cash, and you'll know that you could maybe appropriate it for something else in a more flexible fashion later.
Why not just rebid instead of finding out if it's legal to reduce the bid?
Because we've already done it twice, and if
No, but at a reduced bid, it's the same sort of thing, and if,
yeah,
Weston and Sampson's
you bring
gonna
it
go
down, you bring it down so low that you know it's going to fit within.
right, yeah.
You know, although on our second attempt, we did take a significant amount out,
And it still didn't.
and it was a different bidding environment, and they were still above the original figure.
So can I just ask, so we went out for rebid because we did not get any bidders, is that correct?
No, we had two bidders, but they were both $1.5 million for $1.1 million worth of funding. So then we went back out to bid, and that actually came in, I say $1.1 million. We had to take engineering off the top. We only have about $800,000. So the reduced scope, which we thought would fit within the 800, came in at 1.1. So we could do this again, but I would say if you do it again and it still doesn't work, then you just spend the money on operations, let the offset fall to free cash, and then at least you've captured something you can spend on your own.
Especially if this bidder doesn't want to, if they can legally reduce it and they don't want it, then, I don't know.
So does the board want to look at a third bid attempt?
I think if we can't legally, and and Western and Sam doesn't want it, then put it out for bid at a lower amount, just in case there is a,
And then if that fails, then we just spend the money on operations.
yeah, I guess, yeah,
I don't know what the board's pleasure is here.
I don't know.
I think the cost of everything is only increasing. I don't think that you're gonna get a lower bid.
No, but no, you're not gonna get a lower bid, but you're gonna lower what they're bidding on.
Right.
so-
Scope,
Job.
again,
Scope of the
for a
job.
second time.
Yeah. So you're not getting the work done that you wanna get done, but you're getting some work done.
And what about prolonging it so that we then go for additional funding to finish the rest of it? So if they're coming in at 1.5 million, but I'm just trying to
Well,
understand.
we did go for a federal earmark. We made the deadline for that for 2 million plus, I think. And if that money came in, it would be next spring, and you could actually, if we just spent the money on operations, it would fall to free cash, and you could vote from town meeting to couple that up with the federal earmark. I can't tell you whether you're gonna get the earmark, mind you.
Well, or if town meeting's gonna approve
Right.
spending the money that way.
Right.
But at least you wouldn't lose one single penny of it.
Yeah, I mean, if all else fails, you're gonna spend it on operations so you don't lose any of the federal money.
And we can do
Kind of-
that.
it
We can do
reappears.
that really quickly in the month of December if we have to, right?
The school budget's $753,000.
Like 750, yeah, so probably November and December, within, you'll spend your 1.1, not even in 2 cycles.
Right.
So is the scope of the work too small, and that's why we're only getting minimal bidders, or is it,
That's what our engineer thinks. Because he's also bidding out other jobs, and he's talking to a lot of bidders, and they're like, $1 million job is not a big job anymore. And so they'll take the work, but they're gonna throw a higher price at it unless people are even interested in it. Went from 2 to 1. Because the scope
we
got
found this-
got less.
Right, and we found the same problem with the public safety building. When we were looking at the scope of work for the roof and the siding and all that, it's like.
Got no
we-
bidders.
We got no
wants it?
bids. No one
Yeah.
wants it. It's
So
too
do we go
small.
through that again? We can do it. It's gonna cost money, because the engineer has to go and package the bid again.
Well, isn't packaging that bid costing us around, was it $35,000?
No,
What was?
the engineer is already coming up on, because they've now bid it twice. They're saying continuing on is gonna cost another 30. I guess in a way, it's a tipping point. That's what you're saying.
Well, right.
So, do we spend that money only to have another failure, or do we just bag the thing? What you do have is you do have the completed designs.
But we need to have the work done.
We do.
That's the problem. So we're relying on the federal earmark to cover the work.
If we ever got
Yeah,
it.
if
We
we
don't know if
got
we're
it.
gonna get it.
Yeah, we don't.
So if you do choose to bid it again, the engineer's gonna charge you more money to put it out for a third time, and yeah, I think it was on the order of
So it'd be a lot
30,000.
cheaper to just find out if
If they're interested.
if they're interested.
That's why we wanna try that, and then I have to go with legal counsel to see, okay, we wanna do it, they wanna do it, can we do it on the state and federal level without having a problem?
Yeah.
So we should ask more questions before we make a decision,
Yeah,
don't you think?
yeah, because there's no way to award it tonight, we don't even know the answer to the,
Right.
so it'll come back to you the next meeting, but I wanted to lay out kind of
Yeah.
the conundrum that we're in.
Yeah, I know, it's awful.
Okay. So I think honestly, the next thing on your agenda is gonna be summary of requirements for the new outdoor alcohol service areas.
Right, and so, we talked about at the last meeting, putting together what most of the boards and committees that would have anything to say about this type of expansion would want to see. And I looked back at some of the votes that were taken in the past and what other departments had said, and then I reached out to various departments. And, I think this is a very good summary of what we would expect. But without having that new guidance from council, I don't know that you need to talk about it much more. I think we'll be talking about it at the next meeting in much more detail.
Is there anybody you didn't hear from or that should be on this that isn't?
The latter, I think we've got everyone. As far as who I didn't hear back from yet is DPW,
But you know what their concerns are.
yeah, fire and conservation. But pretty much I know what they'd be looking to do.
Well, they told us the last time we went through this,
Yeah.
so it's just a.
They
repeat.
just didn't respond to this most recent. So I mean, if it comes after talking to council that the board is going to be able to do its own very structured process, and that's what you want to do, this is what's going to fall out of it.
Yeah.
But if for some reason we're told the change in law made this thing a lot looser than it used to be, then there'll be a different discussion
I
around that.
think the hard part for me is thinking, wait, so you want to put 24 more seats outside, what does that mean? And the safety of people, with cars and everything, how do you transport the food? you know, the drawing showed, for this particular person tonight, out a door that I know that the step, from the step in the building to the step outside is almost a foot. That's not a legal step. So do they have to do something?
Well, this is
That
what,
would
this
be
is
the
what
building
this,
inspector.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So
Okay, so that's the type of stuff that I would, you know, I guess there's a part of me that says, so if we write up this as a, hey, here's a high level, this is, you know, if you're gonna do this, here's what you need to know. What's the timeline? Like, so with all of our boards meeting at different times, do they have to go in front of the board, or can they put in one license and it goes from place to place to place to get approval?
they could do all of this in the 2-week cycle between, or even 1 week, depending on when they meet, but they could do all this within a 2-week cycle of when all the boards and committees meet.
Okay.
So, and I think that if we like this, so I read it, and the way it's laid out is perfect to me. Don't think anything was missed, and I would use this if this is the direction we're gonna go, once Brendan talks to council. I think everything is a box checked. We should almost put a checkbox and an initials beside it. We should almost hand this out to the applicant along with the ABCC application if that's what council suggests. And we should have a little checkbox with an initial. And once Bill Sanborn goes out and says, well, that step's too high, you need to put a ramp or whatever,
He's
he
the only
signs
one
it.
that's really got a lot of boxes
A lot
to
of
check.
boxes to check. But
Yeah.
once he does his,
Then it's just,
then
we
it
just
comes
go
back
through.
to us and
Yeah.
we go, okay, everyone's checked their box and initialed it, and we move forward. And if we don't think it checks a box, like, let's say, I'm gonna use an example, it may not be good, but like the farm. Let's pretend they're not within any sort of a buffer zone or the river or anything. We could go to Conservation Commission and write an NA, or we let them write their own NA and initial it so they can say they got their day in court.
Yep.
So I think we should use this as honestly a checklist if we're all happy with, if council says we even need it. So let's put the chicken before the egg and figure out if we need this. But I think that as it sits today, I am great with this.
Okay, so
I agree.
do
Do you have any comments or questions on this at least, Alva?
no, I mean, I reviewed it. I will tell you that I look at this, Brendan, and I am such a technical person. I'm like, oh my God, we need bullets. I can't handle this. I have to read too much. But, so if you're talking checkboxes, I think that to help each of the boards would be better to have them like that, so it bullets underneath where they have to actually check and say, yes, they have this, and they have this, and they have this.
The only one is the building inspector, because he has too many different variables that he's gonna, like the step issue. Yeah, I
No,
mean, you
know,
can't
but you
come
know
up
what,
with
the
everything that
security,
he
like, I
has
even
to
think
do.
of the police.
Yeah,
and-
the
and
police, the
Is it
wetlands.
cordoned off? Is it, you know, is there a barrier so that cars can't just run over the people on, you know?
Yeah.
right, and we might need the department to tell us what the sub-boxes
What
need
are
to
those
look
bo-
like.
Absolutely.
'Cause
I
we
don't
don't
want to
know.
tell them what
Right.
to tell us.
And it may not be check boxes for bollards. It may be a line that says requirement, contingencies or whatever. And it could be that police says must install bollards. And so we say
Or
your
Jersey
vote-
barriers,
Or
or
Jersey barriers or
they
whatever.
want,
So
yeah.
it could be a line where they comment.
Yeah.
Or something.
And that's fine. I really felt like, so the other issue was, like, so with the Board of Health, what are those things that the Board of Health cares about? I don't know what they care about. If you're doing outdoor seating, and in order to bring food out, you walk through the garbage area that you put all your garbage in. Is that okay with the with the Board of Health? I don't
Up to
know.
them. Yeah, that's up to them.
That's,
Well, and they're going to look at grease trap capacity as well. Because, see, one of the things that Woodman has at this point is that they've had the outdoor picnic tables since the 70s, whereas with Vita Bella, they don't have any outdoor seating. So
that's the part that, to me, has to go through legal as far as, so they've had seating where somebody could take their food and go sit outside and sit at the marsh
Yeah.
and look. Now you're asking to be able to put a liquor truck out there so that they can get alcohol out there, or taking the liquor from inside and carrying it outside. Do you call the premise all of their property? And is their insurance covered for that type of volume of property? Because that means I could carry a beer and walk around their whole property.
that's what we're looking for clarity on.
Correct, that's the clarification that we
Right.
need to understand.
Right, and at one point, there was discussion about, okay, yeah, that area was used for food and soda or whatever, okay? But now you're asking for a new type of permit. It happens to be a pretty substantive thing, which is an alcohol permit. And fine, you can continue to do what you've been doing, but does this make a difference where there is a complete review that fires off a bunch of different things.
I don't know, I mean, I mean, I would love to say, yes, everybody can do whatever they want, but at the same time, what's the legality to the town if anything should happen?
On our list here, the summary that we were just chatting about, Pam brings up a really good point, which is that in order to do a alteration of premises or change this, we may want to consider a butter notification in a hearing. So they couldn't actually turn this around in 2 weeks because that requires a 10-day notice. So we'll have to ask these things of council when Brendan calls after
You
July
may
1st.
not need to do that, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So now that the law has changed, we may not need a butter notification or a hearing. So these are important things to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that we need to be talking with council about not only what the scope of review is, but what are the forms? Should we be using the forms we would have used before, you know?
So we need to add the planning board into
Notification,
this
you know.
maybe.
And would this also fall into a property that's now all of a sudden wanting to do outdoor entertainment type of thing? So, and I don't want to pick on Rivers Bend, but something similar to a Rivers Bend. What if the bed and breakfast wanted to decide, okay, we're going to do outdoor and we're going to do all of this? Will they have to follow these same rules?
If they have alcohol.
For
they
an
had a
alcohol
wedding-
permit,
So a bed and breakfast has a wedding and something else, and they want to do an outdoor,
well, they would probably get a one-day, if they get a permanent alcohol license, that's different.
do a one day.
Yeah.
Okay, and thank you, Brendan. So finally on our agenda, we have ideas for guidance to possibly be used with respect to the police chief hiring process.
So I just took some of the ideas that individual members came to me with, and the first thing I wanted to talk about is the process, right? So if you want to do this by preliminary screening committee, using guidance like this, that would have to be a committee that didn't consist of 2 selectmen, because there can't be a quorum of the parent board on a preliminary screening board. So it would probably, if you want to go in that way, so that it could be a private interaction, because it would be done in executive session for preliminary interviews, it would be 1 selectman, me, and then maybe you would bring on someone else from the community, or maybe you just leave it at 2 people, and then only the finalists come forward for public interviews. I want to talk about process a little bit.
Okay.
Can I ask what has happened in the last 4? I'm going to go back 4 since I've been here for 3.
Well, Brendan, how many chiefs have you been employed through? 3 or 2?
It was Chief Harold, Chief Silver, Chief Francis.
Okay,
Those
so
are the
3.
same ones I know.
Chief Platt, I think, left before 2000, I think. I knew him, but I can't remember whether he was chief while I was town administrator.
So will you tell us about the 3 processes you sat through?
Chief Harrell, I believe, was already chief, so I don't know. And then an assessment center was used to hire Chief Silva, which is a group of police chiefs that come together either as volunteers or they're paid nominally, usually by a consultant, to bring applicants and run them through some questioning and some testing, and then make recommendations. Whereas Chief Francis was done by internal promotion.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I think what the board already said here is you weren't looking for the grand assessment center. You were looking to potentially look at some guidelines for a way to screen applicants so you could determine qualities and characteristics that you valued in a potential, list of finalists. So, it can go any way you want it to go.
A lot of these are what you would expect of a chief or an employee, you know?
Right, in general, right.
Yeah.
These are also going to be, I mean, I have some others that I want to, I'll send you some comments in an email. I think this is a really good first pass at what we're looking at. But these are more questions that we're going to ask during the interview process, not the actual job description. So we need to talk about that as well. I know we have a job description on file, and I know it's a
Right.
contractor position, but we
Right.
should relook at that and make sure that it's with police reform and everything that's unfolded, to make sure that it's to today's standards and not 5 years ago and then, 12
have-
years prior to that.
Have we decided on weak versus strong?
So well, my viewpoint on that is we take those words right the heck out of this piece of paper. They're not mentioned in the Chapter 41, Section 97, or Chapter 41, Section 97A. They are more of a,
Discussion of rules and regulations.
Correct.
Yeah.
because I
However,
think-
just remember that that's a town meeting vote. So we don't have to talk about it in the terms weak or strong, but you're not changing that unless you bring that to town meeting.
So which one have we adopted in the past? 97, 41, Section
97A.
All right, so that's where the town meeting would be to change it from 97A to 97.
Correct.
Correct.
I'm just saying, I don't like these words. These are not anywhere in the description on the Mass General Law.
Right.
I searched all of the Mass General laws to see if I could find them, because I believe, I know where I can guess in my heart where they came from, but that's not the way you should be doing it. It's really less of that, and really defining the communication fact of it, and why we would go with one versus the
Right,
other.
it's the level of interactivity between the board and the chief.
Right.
Is
Correct.
generally the tone of those.
Generally, the tone is just about communication, transparency,
Correct.
things that you want to see happen. More about communication, right? It's about just the open lines of communication.
Puts us a lot more in charge, one versus the other, you know?
Which could be looked at in a negative way, and that's what I just want to
Yeah,
mean. It's the
yeah.
pros and cons of both, because, we've talked about, even when we talked about the Conservation Committee, going from a 5-member to a 3-member. Well, that gives a little bit more power to, and the same thing. Does this give the Select Board more power? And if so, that's where we have to define it so that we don't have too much power. We are a Select Board, we are not police chiefs, that's the job of a police chief. And we want to make sure that the town understands we're not trying to be a police chief.
Well, and I think that so the word power in this instance, I don't like, because I don't think you're looking for power, right? I think you're looking for communication. I think that you're looking for a lot of interaction. I think you're looking for meetings, conversations, updates. I don't think you're looking for power at all.
Do we, the board, have the expertise to be able to advise based on that communication? I mean,
You would still need, whether you went with one statute or the other, you would still need the qualified police chief to be providing you with the ideas. It's just, it's a subtle difference between the board saying, these are what we're bringing forward and voting on, versus the chief declaring, this is it, I'm coming to you for your
right,
sign off. It's,
Right.
it's just the degree to which the board becomes involved.
Yeah.
It's very subtle.
so you can tweak things a little bit, potentially, based on our thoughts and desires
I
and,
think it would just be more interactive.
Yeah, it's more of a
That's what I
collaborative,
think, it's more
collaborative effort. So it starts out one way and then you
Collaborative,
collaborate.
interactive, yeah.
Yeah, same difference.
Yep, I agree. It's subtle, but it is different.
yeah.
So I'm hearing things like, let's look at the job description. So maybe I should grab that next. I mean, you're trying to assemble a whole thing, a whole package here, right?
Right.
And you're studying one aspect at a time.
Yeah.
You have a year, so it's not like this has to be done tomorrow, so why don't I pull out the job description, take a look at that? why don't you take a look at some of these ideas and say, hey, I have other ideas, I have other things that I want to say, and we'll keep building this. Think about how you want it administered. Do you want a preliminary screening committee? That type of thing.
So we have 10 months, and so when would we have to have this, like, I'm trying to get an idea of, like, so do you take 2 months to hire a police chief, or does it take you 6 months to hire a police chief? Because I want to be able to give us a deadline of all of this.
You want to get that out there, you want to open it up for at least a month to get the word out there. And then you're going to want to weed through all the applications that you get. Then you're going to want to schedule
Word is probably
screening
already out
interviews.
there,
Yeah,
Yeah, so,
but you're going to want to schedule screening interviews if you go that route.
yeah,
And if you do that, then based on the guidance that the board wants to use, the screening committee could say, well, okay, we actually, we weeded out things that weren't relevant at all. We interviewed in preliminary screening interviews 10, 15, I don't know what it's going to be. And here's what we recommend. Maybe the board wants 3 to 5 that come in for actual
interviews, yeah.
formal public interviews. Exactly.
And keep in mind that if we end up having applicants from within the department, it may be an easier process in the sense of they already have a lot of the expectations of Essex, right? Or not expectations, but knowledge. We already have working relationships with the people that work in the department. They already know the town, the population, so there's some of that as
Right, and
well.
what's on the table right now is kind of a middle in the range, right? You have promotion from within, which we've done. That's how Chief Francis arrived at the position. We've done a formal assessment center. We're doing something kind of in the middle there. But if you ever decide after you think about this some more that you want to go with, let's look at internal candidates first and see if we can find a chief out of that process before we go outside. All of those things are still on the table. What we're trying to do here is give you a sense of what's available so the board can make a decision on how it should proceed. And you have enough time to think about that right now.
Right, and I think that's the thing, is let's make sure that we have all of the i's dotted and t's crossed before we determine if it's going to be an internal promotion or starting with internal applicants, so that we know all the things we're looking for. Because I want to make sure that we know what we're looking
Right.
for, what the job description is,
Right.
what our expectations are, and then say, hey,
Because those things are
this
going to be
is
the
what-
same.
Correct, but if your internal candidate reads that and has a desire to move forward, then at least they have guidance of what our expectation
Do
is.
you have to segment the internal from the non-internal, or can you just,
You don't have to.
anybody apply and some might be internal, some won't?
You could do it that way, or you could say, we're going to go through this first to see whether we think there's a good possibility here. And if it doesn't pan out, then you move on, or you could just have everyone apply together. But these are the things I think you need to just think about, and maybe at the next meeting, like I'll start looking at the job description, we'll talk again. Eventually, you'll all agree on a scope and a
Right.
package,
Yep.
and then we'll put that into motion.
Yep, okay, makes sense.
When do you need to, one of the things that seems like there's a hard and fast, though, is the process in who's going to interview the people. Like, you're one of the people, but it can only be one Board of Select
If you-
member.
Right, unless yes. So the committee could also have people from the community on it if you wanted to look in that direction.
Which I think, do we want to wait and talk about which one of us wants to serve on the committee, the hiring process committee, or do we want to talk about that now? And then we can talk about whether or not we want to bring somebody in from the community at a later date.
I think that we should plan to have that defined by November, as far as who the board member is, and then if we want to bring somebody in, so that after the first of the year, we would be off running.
Okay.
Because we have 5 months after the first of the year. I don't want to pick it
6
now.
months. Yeah, 6 months.
Because I could run into a bus tomorrow and not be here. But I think it's too soon to decide that.
Okay.
Yeah, so we just
So we'll
keep
hold.
collecting
We'll keep collecting
information.
information.
Yeah, we have plenty of time to,
Yeah, and the documents I had read had been more about the oversight, and, with the 97 and a 97A was more of the oversight and who has that type of, we need to me, we have to define what that oversight means so that anybody who applies for the position understands what they're responsible for.
Yes.
All right,
Sure, but really just, at the end of the day, it's just rules and regulations.
They're doing essentially the same thing.
They're doing the same job. It's just a matter of us having input versus
Yeah.
not.
I mean, they're the expert, you know?
So.
But it's-
That's, again, I don't want it, they are the experts. And so our oversight would be more, this needs to be reported to the Board of Selectmen. This needs to be approved by the Board of Selectmen. And not every time they do something, the Board of Selectmen saying, no, you did that wrong.
I think,
Oh,
well, I think it would be, you're going to still get from the professional chief all of the things in the rules and regulations that have to do with policing, and you're not going to know
Right,
one from the other.
right.
But you in the 90s, the chapter, what is it, section 97, you're going to be able to add into that perhaps some things that a chief wouldn't do on their own. Like, if this happens, it goes to the selectmen, whereas it doesn't, you know, that maybe is not necessarily a requirement in the law, but you're going to see to it that accountability is put into the rules and regulations because you've chosen to be more involved in the design and development of the, or revision of the rules and regulations.
And it's gonna be 99, probably 90%
Police
police stuff.
standards that you're
Yeah,
not going to be involved with anyway.
Yeah,
This is just a subtle difference because it is saying, we want more collaboration, we want more partnership, and we may want to include a few things in there that you wouldn't have necessarily thought of because they're process-oriented
Yep.
Right.
and they're important to us in that regard. All right, that's going to be the difference.
makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, okay. So we obviously have the 2 pages of what everyone responded to Brendan with, and he put it in a great format. If there's any more you want to add, please do so in an email to him. We obviously don't copy each other, but send it to him and he'll add it to this. I know I have a couple that I'll send your way.
Let me know, and then I'll look at the job description and start
And one
bringing
more
that.
question, so you're saying that this would have to be approved for town meeting, so that means in, fall town meeting, is that correct? Because
Oh, it's
we
spring.
should already have a police chief.
No, because we're going to have to, put out the advertisement to hire before annual.
Right.
Okay, so I lied, all that stuff I said was wrong, if we have to do this by fall town meeting.
But just that thing, just that one piece,
Yeah.
Yeah, not the whole.
not the whole. We don't need to know about the hiring process and who's sitting in and if we're getting a community member. We don't need to know any of that.
We need to be able to tell applicants, look, it's going to be, we think, under this statute.
Right, that's it.
Could be the same, could be different.
And then the last thing that I had was, as far as presenting this to town meeting to get a vote on one versus the other, would we say that we're in the process of defining all of that, or? I'd
It's
like-
defined.
And,
It's already defined.
have you read the general thing?
No, I haven't gone through it all.
And then, is there towns that do use one or the other that we could,
Yeah. Yeah. I
that
can-
would be my
yeah.
other thing, is if you're gonna get something passed, they need to understand why and who's doing it.
It's a good point. Who's doing it and how successful it's been.
Yeah, I can find that out.
Okay, anything else from the board on the chief hiring process? No. I am turning over to public comment. If there's anybody on the line with us that would like to make public comment, please unmute yourself, identify yourself with your name and address, and feel free to speak. Okay, not hearing any public comments. Is there any public comment in the room? Alva?
I have a public comment in regards to the The 911 outage, how did we do as a town? Was everything okay? Did we have any scary, since you're here? Not, thank God.
Danny, do you want to come to the? I wasn't working, so okay. No comment on that. I haven't heard anything.
I haven't heard any problems.
Yeah.
Great. Good. I was very nervous when I got the text, so I'm pretty sure everybody was.
If there's no public comment, I will entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:09 PM.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Joan.
Thanks, Ruth.